Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, also known as ETCG1 on this channel. Here on ETCG1, we'd like to wish you a happy birthday at the beginning of all of our videos, so if it's your birthday, happy birthday. Now we move on to the subject at hand, which is what I love about cars. What got me started into this whole business industry? Why do I do this? And I think I'm not alone in some of the things I'm about to share with you. And I'd love to hear more about how you feel about it. And that's what comments and also forum discussions are for, which both will be available to you. Hey, isn't it great? Behind me, you'll see my 82 Mustang also parked next to my 79 Fairmont that I'm going to combine into the Frankenmont, whatever we're gonna call it. Yeah, those of you that are familiar and following that project know what I'm doing there. I'm basically building a sleeper. Now, I have for many years, many years, I'm trying to count how many years, more than 25 years, been wanting to build something like that. I mean, ever since my first car, I got a 72 Galaxie 500, big old car, made a great noise, wasn't that fast. I mean, it had a 351 Windsor. So it did go down the road, but it wasn't killer. It wasn't, you know, what you would consider a quote-unquote real fast car. But for a 16-year-old kid, it was kind of awesome. It was mine, and I'd always wanted to build it into something more. And that's when I began studying about how to do precisely that. It was the love of that car that propelled me on to eventually do this for a living. I think it's like that for a lot of us. We fall in love with something or some aspect of it. Maybe a dad or an uncle or a mom or a sister might have had a really cool car, and we sort of fell in love with it. And from then on, it was like, okay, how can I do that? How can I learn that special magic? How can I, you know, become that mechanical necromancer that has the ability to do that type of thing? Well, I spent years working toward that path, and I'm finally to a place where, you know, I've gained, I feel, enough knowledge, got a little bit of work to do, a little bit of practice on my welding, but gained a lot of the knowledge that I need in order to make something like this happen, to build something of my own, to make it my own, to make it my car. So it's not just something that the factory made, I got in, I turned the key, I drove down the road. No, I had a hand in it. I had some kind of blood, sweat, and tears that have been putting into making that thing happen. And that, you know, going from the nothing, the Fairmont, which, you know, let's face it, it's not a bad car. It's kind of a nice car. In fact, some of you are like, leave the Fairmont alone, just don't touch it. It's nice the way it is. I get it. I get where you're coming from, but it's not what I want. It's not my vision. And that's the point. That's the point of this video, is that you take something that is, and you're not quite happy with it. So you use that mechanical necromancy to alter it, to change it, to make it different. I had the privilege of sitting down with Stacy David last year at SEMA, and he was talking about this a little bit and how he got started into it. And it was similar for him in that he used to work in a shop. I forgot whose shop it was, but he always kind of liked cars, but he watched somebody take, you know, the metal out of the car, completely cut it, completely rearrange it, and make it into something completely different. This is something that at the time he hadn't imagined was possible or imagined doing, but once he saw it, that's all he wanted to do. And so that's what he ended up doing, and he became very good at it, very practiced at it. And not all of us are so privileged to work in the quote-unquote hot rod world and be able to do that type of thing. But I think a lot of us might feel that might be the dream job, to work in that speed shop, to learn that stuff, to have that knowledge, which is a specialized knowledge. So many years ago, I had this experience with this guy in a restaurant. He was talking, he was kind of loud, maybe a little bit drunk, well, he was obnoxious, to be honest with you. But he was talking car stuff. He was somebody that apparently, according to him, worked in NASCAR. So I struck up a conversation with him. I think it's just something that car people do. You know, they hear people talking about cars, or somebody's doing something with a car, and you get kind of curious. It's like, what's going on? You know, it's just one more opportunity to learn something else. Well, anyway, I'm talking to this guy, and he was sort of, you know, I was getting a feel for what he did in NASCAR, and, you know, he had asked what I did, and I said I'm a mechanic. He was like, oh, well, what we do is way beyond anything that you would have knowledge of or know how to do. And I bristled at that a bit, thinking, you know, hang on a minute, you don't know what I know, And I'm not saying, that I work in NASCAR or anything like that, but I do understand the principles behind it. I do understand the engineering behind it. And I work in the mechanical field, so it's not like I'm a complete noob. But that's the way he wanted to treat me. And some people are like that in the car world, as I'm sure you've probably found. That's kind of where we come from. That's kind of what we do. And I think some of us do get to that point where we're like, okay, we've learned and gained experience and gone through. I mean, you've gone through some of these things, like I've gone through in my videos during engine replacements, things like that, things that are just, you hit a wall, think that Montana exhaust studs, and maybe I could have done that better, but either way, you run into those days. I don't care who you are, you run into those days that really work you, that really, that you sort of want to walk away for good at the end of them, but then you come back fighting the next day because maybe it's all you can do. But anyway, you live through those things and you gain that. You sort of level, it's like a video game, you level up as you go along, and you get to a certain level, and you do look down on other people that don't do what you do. I don't like to be that way. I like to say, okay, well, you want to learn something? All right, well, let's learn. And I say let's learn because a lot of times in teaching, I learn just as much, if not more. And also just sharing that knowledge. You never know what you're going to learn from people, even people that know less than you. They sometimes just that different set of eyes see something new and different. But my point is that car people, I think, just are car people. And for me, one of the telltale signs for me is that if I'm having a bad day, I can come in here, start that Mustang up, and a smile goes across my. I don't even have to drive it. If it's raining outside, in fact, I don't really drive that car much. Let's face it, it's not very safe. But that said, just starting it up, just hearing it run, makes me feel great. Even if I'm in the worst of moods, that puts me there. There's something about us car people that attracts us to that. And the potential of that noise, what that noise can do. Can it do 13s? Well, I doubt that Mustang does 13s. Probably 16s on a good day. But that said, that's still pretty cool. It's better than the 20s the Fairmont does. The point is that it gets under your skin. I think it's something you're born with. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I remember I grew up in the 70s. I remember looking at Corvettes and thinking, man, those are cool. I just love the look, that shape. And then I worked on them later in life, and I didn't like them so much anymore because working on those Corvettes was not so fun. But they looked cool, they made a great noise, they were fast. Some of them were fast, most of them were fast. But still, I think you get my point. I mean, from a little age, and that song, that Gary Newman song, here in my car, I feel safest of all. I heard that, it was like, that was me. I didn't feel safe inside the house. Grew up watching horror movies. And in all the horror movies, somebody's in the house, they hide in the closet, they got nowhere to go, and next thing you know, they're dead. For me, I'm thinking, get in the car and drive away. But then, they're in the back seat, they come up, yeah, I know, whatever. We're talking strictly hypotheticals here, but personally, I always felt safest when I was in the car, because I was mobile, I could get places, I could do things, it was awesome. I'll admit that actually after I became a mechanic, I mean, all that excitement, all that drive and everything to learn more about the machine, how it worked, what it did, drove me to straight A's in school for becoming a mechanic. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn it the best I possibly could, be the best I possibly could at it. And I was. I achieved that goal. At the time, at least in my own mind, I achieved that goal. But then I got there, and I started doing it for a living, and I've talked about this in other videos, and I slowly began to erode away at my interest in extracurricular projects. I had that other 72 Galaxy that I had the 429 in, the one in older videos that I ended up selling because it was flat broke. Missed that car, and that was sort of on my way to becoming the car that I would build, but here we are again, years later. I don't know how many years later it is, 5 years, at least 5, maybe 6 years later, and I'm back to it. And I've come at it with a renewed interest. Actually, a lot of you have helped renew my interest. Also the time and the shop and the space. I mean, I have the best stinking place to do this kind of stuff in. I mean, look, they're just parked over there right next to each other. I would be jealous of me for what I have here with this stuff. And so grateful to be able to do this, and not only do this, but be able to share it with other car people who may get inspired to do their own things, or even better, I mean, throughout this whole Fairmont project, all of you car people out there that have been like, hey Eric, you know, I've had a whole lot of people that have built Fairmonts or Mustangs or know stuff about it reach out to me and say, hey, this is what to do in your setup, this is what to look out for. I've even had people offer to sell me parts, the rest of the parts I need. I mean, it's a community, it's really cool, and unfortunately I think we're dwindling. I think that, you know, the interest in this type of thing is sort of going away, and I think that's sort of the fault of the kind of cars that are coming out now. There are a few cars out there that are exciting, but as far as being able to modify them and change them and make them your own, they're making that less and less likely. I mean, in fact, they're working towards making it so that you buy a vehicle like an appliance and that's that. You know, you don't mess with it after that. If you mess with it, you can buy our factory sanctioned upgrades. Now, sure, there's going to be smart people out there figuring out how to game the system, whatever, and do what they can do to their own ends. But I think as a whole, it's not the same. I grew up in a small town. At least part of my growing up was in a small town, my later high school years. And there really wasn't much to do. So we messed around with our cars. You know, we drove around back roads. We did that kind of thing. That was our thing. There wasn't iPads or any of that kind of crap. You know, video games, yes, but not what they are today. But my point is that that's what we went to. Now there's a lot of other things for kids, I hate to say, growing up to do, so there may not be as much interest. Sure, there's people out there that, like me, as young people, are looking at the cars, looking at the stuff, maybe Top Gear fanatics, whatever, that grow up into this and are the next generation of whatever, but I'm not seeing as many as I did when I was younger. Maybe that's just, you know, the changing times. Of course, times are going to change, but yeah, who knows. But I just wanted to share a little bit about what inspired me. You know, like I said, from a young age, I have always wanted to do car stuff. I was taking stuff apart since I was a kid, working on my bikes until I got to the point where I got my first car. And I got the car actually before I could drive, so it sat in the backyard and I tinkered with it and did stuff with it until I could actually drive it away and make it my own. And it was the greatest feeling ever. And I've never forgotten it. In fact, I've spent years trying to get back there and create something of my own. And I'm glad you're along with me here for this journey, because it's going to be fun. I'd love to see how that thing's going to turn out. It's exciting. All of that said, feel free to share your experiences, comments, that kind of thing. In fact, there will be a link in the description to a forum discussion about this video. We can talk about it over there, or if you want, contribute in the comments. Whatever you feel like. I'm just happy you're watching, so thank you for that. But please share your experiences on growing up a car person, boy, girl, whatever. It's what we are, it's what we do. What gets you excited about all this kind of stuff? Anyway, I'm Eric the Car Guy, and hey, if you have automotive questions, I'd ask that you head over to ericthecarguy.com. Why? Because I spent a whole bunch of time and effort making it a place to where you can get answers to those automotive questions. If you wish to connect with me socially, I can be found on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, also Instagram. Close each of my videos with be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and never lose your love for the machine. See you next time.